Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira. In order to transform the entire ecosystem of public services through the use of information technology, the Government of India launched the Digital India program in 2015 with a vision to transform India into a digitally empowered society and knowledge economy. The Prime Minister on Monday once again made a strong pitch for Digital India, saying the country has become the hotspot of digital innovation across all sectors. Since its launch, the Digital India campaign has been moving ahead and the government has undertaken several initiatives to work towards the country's dream of a Digital India. But what is Digital India? What digital progress have we made over the years? What are India's strengths in harnessing technology and how is digital infrastructure keeping pace? That's what we are going to try and find out on this edition of The Big Picture. Joining me on the program today are A.K. Bhattacharya, Editorial Director of the Business Standard, Virag Gupta, Cyber Law Expert and Supreme Court Advocate, Arpan Kumar, Assistant Professor, IIT Delhi, and we'll also be joined by Dilraj Singh Gandhi, Director of KPMG. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Professor Kar, I'd like to begin with you, of course, before we go into a detailed discussion about India being a digital power. Let's try and understand first what Digital India really is.
Okay, first of all, if I consider myself, I'll consider myself in the role of a devil's advocate. So as an academic who works in the domain of digital transformation and public policy, for me, Digital India is a program which is not isolated from many other programs that government has. Of course, when we are talking of Digital India as a program, we are talking of a kind of transformation of the entire nation, connecting every services, connecting every citizens with ICTs. But it's much more beyond that. When we are looking at something like Digital India, we have to consider that today India as an economy has about 50% of its population below the age of 25 and 25% and more than 65% of the population below the age of 35. The Indian telecom industry has currently 1.2 billion subscribers, which is also supported by the second largest base of 340 million internet subscribers. And among the subscribers, 36% of the mobile users are smartphone users, which should grow to 50% of the population by 2020. Digital India is basically a platform, an initiative of Government of India, which can really trigger this base that is already there in Indian ecosystem and take it to the future transformation of the country. A lot of the services that the Indian government renders to its citizens is basically through a digital platform. A lot of e-governance services are provided. Digital India is basically an initiative that will connect multiple initiatives of Government of India, just like Make in India, Smart City Innovation, Smart City Policy of India, then Telecom Policy of India. All this will be connected towards in a single platform, which will look forward to transforming the entire economy of India.
Okay. Great. Mr. Bhattacharya, we just heard what the professor, say, and he's very, elaborately told us what Digital India really is. So what is it that makes India a digital power? Is it the infrastructure or is it the IT sector, the software sector, Infosys, Wipro, and all of those companies that make India truly a digital power?
Well, I would not refer to India's IT prowess as a sign of India's becoming an emerging digital powerhouse, but rather focus on how the digital instruments, digital devices are helping empower people, empower governance, and empower doing business. So both doing business and governance and connecting people, empowering them is what Digital India is actually doing. Now, the issue before the Digital India initiative is essentially how do you create a basic infrastructure that can sustain the growth of digital penetration. Now, it is true that India has got the second largest internet using population in the world. Is right now considered to be 34% of India's population is using internet. It was only 10% just about 7 years ago. So it's a rapid rise. And yet, if you look at the infrastructure, the point that you referred, you realize that we have a lot of catch up to do when it comes to infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, what I mean is this: even though you have got 34% of India's population is using internet, what you're actually seeing is the average speed of this internet in this country is only around 4 megabytes per second. Now, which is not a good enabling instrument for spreading digital India in a more effective way. So that's challenge number one as far as infrastructure is concerned. And challenge number two would be, in my view, how do you address the questions of privacy when it comes to digital India, and how do you address the question of KYC norms when you are trying to introduce digital processes, digital governance systems.
So do they act as roadblocks?
They may be a big challenge, because like in telecoms, we have seen remarkable growth in telecoms, but we have also seen that because the infrastructure in telecom has not kept pace with this phenomenal rise in the subscribers, which is, as Professor Kaur right now said, that is gone beyond 1.2 billion numbers, but your infrastructure in telecom is constrained. So therefore, even though you have got the handset by which you can talk and you can exchange data, but you may not get the connection. So your instruments are there, the hardware is there, but spectrum availability is an issue.
Sure.
Similarly, my fear is that you may have a large number of a population which is supposed to go up to 50% in the next few years. You may have the people wanting to use internet, but where is the internet highway which can help these internet connectivity? So the Digital India program sees a big challenge.
The users are bound to go up, but the bandwidth isn't, is what you're suggesting.
That is what, yeah, exactly.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Let me bring in Virag Gupta now. We just heard the challenges, put forth by Mr. Bhattacharya. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate India's digital prowess?
No, this Digital India program is a evolution which is taking place for last many years, and nobody can dispute its usability, its so many good things for the administration, for elimination of corruption, everything. And I fully endorse Bhattacharya ji and IT professor. Further roadblocks, there are 3 areas which requires attention, and I feel that government has not done much important in these 3 areas. Number 1 is legal system creating for the Digital India. Number 2 is economic system, and number 3 is IT system. Now, legal system, our Information Technology Act has yet to define e-commerce. It has yet to define what is blockchain. It has yet to define and regulate the companies like Ola and Uber. Now, further to privacy, more important thing is data protection. Now, safety of the users. Now, these things are there for which government has to make laws and regulation. Now, for making the laws and regulation, besides the failure of our parliamentary system, there are many regulators which claims that we are the regulator. So many times the things comes from the tribe, many times things comes from the government side. So we don't know who are the regulator and what are the laws. So once you propagate some program, so there has to be legal system so that you can regulate them. Now the second aspect is economic system, so that you can properly regulate and tax them. In this economic system, all the foreign companies which are working in India, they are to be properly taxed. Now we have seen that even Trump has persuaded many companies to come USA and pay their arrears of the taxes. Now these companies are earning money from Indian operations, and it is going to the tax haven companies like Ireland. For that, in Income Tax Act, clear-cut provisions are to be made so that it may not impact the Indian employment scenario. Now coming to the information technology system. Now if the government is spreading this Digital India, so government has to make their own IT system in a very, very strong net. Now we have seen many honey trap, defense, this system is compromised. So in 2012, when I argued the Govindacharya petition, it was argued before High Court, and government issued a policy by which it was said that in government system there will be two parallel systems, one for the social media uses and one for the government uses, so that data is properly protected. Now we don't have the parallel system for the social media and for the other uses, so our data is not safe. Now the second is, even all the government officials don't have the NIC email ID. Now you are saying that we want to spread the digital India to 127 crore people, but if we are not able to provide 50 lakhs central government employees and 3 crore state government employees official email ID, how our data can be safe? Now the most important point is servers. If where the servers, their regulation will be there. One server gives employment average 1,000 people. Now all the companies which are working in India, doing business in India as per Make in India program should be compelled to establish their servers in the interest of national security and in the interest of Indian economy.
Okay, great. Let me go across to Dilraj Singh Gandhi now. Dilraj Singh Gandhi, as far as challenges, roadblocks, Mr. Bhattacharya and Virag Gupta have listed them all out in front of us. How do we overcome these challenges? What needs to be done going forward?
See, I agree with Mr. Bhattacharya and our eminent panelist that there are roadblocks and there are challenges. But at the end of the day, let me tell you, and if I talk about as a common citizen, we are passing through this excitement era. Yes, there are connectivity issues, there are spectrum issues, and if I talk about beyond that, there are digital divide issues. But having said this, what I am looking forward is, and the government has to emphasize more on skill, experience and technical capabilities to really understand the contracts and clear the contracts and fasten the process, right? And there needs to be a body, governing body, to ensure that all the initiatives or the roadblocks are handled under one umbrella. For example, I touch upon a very simple roadblock, BharatNet. Now, in 2011, it was decided that about 2.5 lakhs of Gram Panchayats will be connected. But unfortunately, and it was supposed to be connected within 2 years, but you'll be surprised to know that by 2016-17, if I'm not wrong, only 40% was achieved. Now, why is it so? Because there is no persuasion probably, or there is no one body to really fix up the issue. There are multiple bodies working across the table. Probably unless until we have one umbrella focusing on these aspects which Mr. Bhattacharya, Mr. Lohr, talked about, it will be very, very difficult to manage all these issues. Whether it's related to cyber, whether it's related to connectivity, whether it's even related to electricity. And to be honest, if you talk about digital India, it's not about urban, it's about rural. And in rural, you have an issue of custodians. Who is the custodian of that infrastructure which is being built up in the Gram Panchayat or around that area. So all these issues, probably one is a policy. There's no current policy around it. There is no forcing. I will talk about enforcement piece, which is there. Okay, if you don't do it within this time frame, then what happens? There's no such service level agreement which we could see which could enforce this. Unless until that commitment comes from the government side, it will be very, very difficult.
Okay. Let me take the points that you're making to the professor. Now, Professor Kar, several very valid points made, so as to overcome these challenges. One suggestion is that we need a digital policy. Another suggestion, of course, is that, we need to enhance the IT Act itself and maybe bring about one common act to try and deal with all the problems that are faced as far as digital India is concerned. Would you agree with that? Do we need a digital policy first and foremost, and do we need better laws?
I agree, in fact, with a lot of these comments which are made, but I don't think that many of these things are very far off, to be very frank. For example, initial days when we started this journey towards a digital India, it's not something like a greenfield project to me. Being an academic, I feel it's more of a brownfield project where we are trying to constantly improve on a lot of infrastructure and facilities which is already there by trying to take it to the next level of maturity. So in that, I sense that the telecom policy of India, which is being planned in 2018, will have a massive role to play. I agree with the discussions which has been made that there is a need for trying to improve the infrastructure of telecom, the regulatory guidelines surrounding how, say, the connectivity is managed. But I think right now, we are moving to a very different direction of telecom usage and internet usage altogether. What has to happen earlier, most of the guidelines of, say, TRI is geared towards call drops. But with internet coming into the picture of mobile devices and smartphones in such a huge way, I think more than call drops, we need to think of how data connectivity needs to be intact. When people are using 5G, when people are using mobile applications and over the top kind of applications like WhatsApp and data interchange apps, I think that's where more crux should be there. And for that, the government of India is probably planning to really increase the number of mobile hotspots, the Wi-Fi hotspots, the amount of mobile penetration of internet in the rural areas. Surrounding the rural areas, I think that's where the crux of growth and development will happen. And of course, the government of India is also trying to do a lot of things. I can bring into point of the National Digital Literacy Mission, which has attempted to train about 52 lakh, households, one member from each household across rural India to understand and use digital devices, smartphones, and a lot of technology. Similar such training programs for the rural India, like investor awareness program, then legal literacy program, have been initiated by the government of India side. And I think these will have a huge impact in terms of how digital India in the days to come really shapes up more from a greenfield project to more of a improvement project to enhance the quality of life, to enhance how citizens of India from rural and from urban
let me take the point that you're making to Mr. Bhattacharya, because we've got limited time on the program and we spent quite a bit of time in our opening remarks. Mr. Bhattacharya, infrastructure needs to keep up or keep pace with the technology, and also we need to constantly improve our technology as well. The example of voice calls to data that he has given is a very valid example.
Absolutely. I think, we have to recognize that the primary focus, if I can list out the primary imperatives for making Digital India, which is a grand program, a success, would be 4-point agenda actually in my view. The first is create a strong digital backbone. And how do you do that? Not just waiting for mobile connectivity to give you data connections and data services, but actually build more fiber optic network in the country. Today, the fiber optic network country is connecting less than 300,000 people in this country. So which is, in my view, is actually a very poor record. We must increase the penetration of digital optical connectivity with more people. That what will give you a robust data network, and the information highway will really be wide. Number one. Number two, I would say that you must focus on, as Mr. Gandhi was talking about, on digital literacy with a focus on gender disparity. The digital literacy is very important. Right now, the internet usage is 71% of every man is in India is using, 71% of male population use internet, but only 29% of women are using internet. Now that, to my mind, is a gender gap which should not be allowed to widen. And number three, I would say that we must focus a lot on rebuilding the muscles of this common service center concept, because we were supposed to create 250,000 common service centers in these gram panchayats, but not much work we have seen. And on the contrary, what we have seen of late is these CSCs have been denied the facility of updating Aadhaar numbers. Now, as a result, the idea of CSC, a great idea to take digital connectivity, digital India to the villages, has probably slowed down a bit. And finally, we need to be a little wary, and our regulatory framework has to be conscious of the spread of digital monopolies. And the digital monopolies in the world and in India should not be allowed to grow unchecked, if they are at the cost of consumer choices and consumer convenience.
Sure. I saw Dilraj Singh Gandhi putting up his hand there and wanting to come in on the debate, and Virag Gupta as well. I'm just going to come to you. Before that, Dilraj Singh Gandhi, go ahead, make your point, please.
Yeah, thank you. In fact, a couple of things. One is that when you talk about digital, you may not really be able to penetrate what you are planning to do without any disruptive thinking. And one of the disruptive thinking could be that how do I strengthen my PPP model? For example, we have been talking about public Wi-Fi penetration, and as a global standard across the world, you need one Wi-Fi hotspot for 150 users So that means in India we need 8 million Wi-Fi hotspots to make it successful, and there we have only around about 31,000 odd hotspot, again 31,000 people. So there's a long way to cover, and we will not be able to do it if we are dependent only on certain government agencies or only on these very traditional ideas. And the disruptive ideas can only come when we strengthen the PP model, which is actually actuated, driven by skilled, experienced, entrepreneurs, mindset people, maybe on the government body, maybe with a panelist, or maybe the set of individuals who are working under government umbrella. But that disruptive thinking has to be bought in if we want to really translate this digital India dream into reality. The traditional ways will actually lead us to nowhere.
Okay, disruptive thinking needs to be brought in is what you're suggesting. Are we ready for disruptive thinking, Virag Gupta?
I will simply add one more point what Professor Kar was discussing, call drop. Now it shows the chain reaction of the regulatory failure. I argued this matter, and the call drop, 70,000 crore rupees was recovered by the telecom companies from the customers for call drop when there was no calls at all. Now, because they were not having the financial capability to purchase the spectrum, they are not having the financial capacity because free calls are available in the WhatsApp and other places. Now, these platforms are not regulated at all by the TRAI. When the free services are available, why anyone will pay for the spectrum? Now, in the same manner, let's see current banking, this scam system and failure. Two things are there. Number one, why the ED, RBI and all these agencies are not properly connected before connecting Digital India? Because once they are connected, so all the information are available. Income tax rate is there, that information available with the ED information available with the SEBI. So nobody can take advantage of everything. Now, in that atmosphere, NPCL is allowing WhatsApp for the banking this payment system without ensuring the proper safeguard that what the WhatsApp company is, what is their credentials, how will you ensure the safety and other things. I personally feel that this Digital India must reach to each and every person. It is good for the Indian administrative system, for the governance, but in the meantime we have to see that we are not victim of the next round of collision where we are fully controlled by the American companies.
Okay, great. I'm going to get final closing comments now from all my guests, starting with Professor Kar. You know, Professor Kar, what does Digital India mean for the economy?
Well, for the economy, I sense that it is a chance to really develop from an emerging economy to a developed economy. So if Digital India is successful, for me, in the next 10 years, it should position India as a developed economy.
Okay. Mr. Bhattacharya, what's the way forward as far as Digital India is concerned? What needs to be done?
I think it's very important to create more competition by allowing more players in building infrastructure. Infrastructure for Digital India has to be treated as a common good. It cannot be used by monopolies, and nor can it be monopolized. Even if it is created by the private sector, its use and access should not be regulated in a manner that the users' interests are affected. So therefore, more infrastructure, use it as common good, and make them available to all users at a certain fee or whatever may be the terms. But that should not be the, like availability of road space cannot be a matter of debate. Availability of road space should be a kind of a given right for all citizens of Digital India.
You know, talking about citizens and talking about Digital India, Dilraj Singh Gandhi, what does Digital India mean for the common man?
So I will say, who is digital? Any person who has a choice, voice and device is digital. So for a common man, it summarizes, in totality, that anyone who can connect with the government services, with any mobile or mobile computing devices sitting anywhere, anytime is digital for that common man. Now, that could be whether on the smart mechanism, but the services or information, dissemination of information is all about digital. But I'll add one more point, very important here. See, when I talked about disruption, let's go back a year back. How did this e-payment suddenly rose? It was one disruptive of our Shri Narendra Modi ji to demonetize. Now, that's the amount of shake required. That's what I'm talking about, disruptive thinking, to make it possible a reality. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to penetrate with this Digital India.
Okay. And I don't think we can keep having, disruptive modules on and on and on. We've had a couple of them. We'll have to wait and see, what exactly is going to happen on that front. But Virag Gupta, please close the show for us, with what are the sectors that are going to benefit the most going forward as far as Digital India is concerned?
IT and many other sectors will be benefited, but if proper regulatory network is not there, it may create a new digital divide. In Delhi, if a molestation complaint is there, if you do a tweet, police will come to your home and lodge a police FIR. And if in a small village, you go to police station many times and they will not lodge your police FIR. So this will create a new digital divide if properly regulatory network is not there. Otherwise, this digital expansion and the Digital India is going to benefit all the sectors of the economy.
Okay, all right. On that note, then we'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. I'd like to thank all my guests, A.K. Bhattacharya, Virag Gupta, Arpan Kumar and Dilraj Singh Gandhi. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's it from me. See you again next time.